Welcome here to another episode of the changes between Shenmue the Animation versus the actual video games. Now, if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing. We talk about video games, old classic ones, and then the ones that just come back to life. And of course, Shenmue is my favorite video game of all time, so we're talking Shenmue the Animation, which if you don't know, Shenmue itself is a video game that came out for Dreamcast in 1999. And 2000 in North America, actually, and then 2001 was a sequel, Shenmue 2, and then Shenmue 3 didn't come out until 2019, November. So that's 3 Shenmue games. We're trying to increase the popularity, but then, of course, Shenmue, the animation, is just another step so more eyes can be on the Shenmue brand. And here we are, episode 8. If you want to see more of these type of episodes describing the differences between the games and the actual animation, you can of course, check out my channel and see the rest of them. But without further ado, first of all, spoiler territory, so you gotta know that I'm gonna talk about pretty much episode 8, the entire Shenmue series as well when it comes to the video games, and then comparing them in this episode. And yeah, finally, I got the lights back on. No more darkness in this room. And as another note, if you want to catch episode 9, it's going to be out at midnight tonight on Adult Swim. And of course, it'll also be on CrunchyRoll, so you can check that out. And then I'll do the comparison of episode 9. The reason I do it like so late right before the episodes come out is because I want to increase the hype so you can make sure you remember to watch the next episode tonight. But if I can get them out earlier, trust me, I would. But it's a lot of work that goes into these. Okay, I've blabbed on enough. Let's get started with the differences and things I caught in Shenmue episode 8. Now, as the episode starts, you see here Shenhua and then Landi approaching her while he's holding a mirror. Now, this sequence happens when you get the bad ending in Shenmue 2. But in the animation, they changed it a bit by it being another dream that Ryo's having. Now, Ryo didn't really start having these dreams anymore when he got to Hong Kong. That stuff only happened in the first Shenmue game. But here, we're just showing how you can use those scenes to continue to show that Ryo's still having those dreams, which wasn't part of the game, but it's here. Now here in this scene, we're having Ryo basically having to pay his rent by taking the books outside. Now this stuff does happen in the games, but the difference is, in the games, the books were already stacked on a shelf indoors and he had to bring them out. And rather than having that other guy helping Ryo out with the books, you have Fang Mei who's helping out with the books. Basically, they completely got rid of his character and had Fang Mei come out. And also in these first scenes with Fang Mei, you're really starting to see her like slight temper, which is actually true to the games depending on how you treat her. She does have a slight little temper, but in this episode they really started to bring out her actual temper side. Even though she's pretty sweet, she's got that fire. Now in this next shot, we see Joy talking to the hotel manager, and the hotel manager's like, yeah, he left and he paid his entire bill. So who knows? And Joy was like, what? He left? And what's interesting and kind of reminds me of the game is that when you, of course, transition from the hotel to staying with Ying, what's funny is that you just go from one to the other. You don't, like, get out of the hotel or anything like that. But in the game, you have the ability to forego paying the rent. If you kind of leave off in a corner and try to sneak out of the hotel, you can go all those days without ever paying that hotel manager anything. But what happens is that Joy actually pays your bill for you. And that comes later on in the game. You get like a note that, yep, she paid the bill, like in your little journal. But in this situation, they're like, no, he definitely paid the whole bill. So, yeah, moving on. So in this next scene, basically Ryo took out all the books, and Fang Mei's just really not having it with Ryo's attitude. And Fang Mei says, yeah, we're going to have to put them back tonight and then do it again tomorrow. And Ryo's kind of like, what? Oh man, and she's just like really cross with him and short with him because she's like, yeah, this is what we gotta do, and she just doesn't like his like attitude. Next scene, we see Hanhui Lu, who is like that trainer that helps Shu Ying in the Manmo Temple, basically telling him that he's really gotta focus on the Wuru to really learn Kung Fu. And Ryo's just trying to not be distracted from his mission, which is really to fight Yuan Dozu, and that's what he cares about. Next, we see Ryo as he runs into Guishang Li as she's taking old teacups into a tea shop. And she says about the teacups that even though they're old, the value lies in that of the beholder. And that really kind of comes into full circle in this episode because she's really trying to teach him that it may not be valuable to you, but to those that value whatever it is that you're holding, it is very important. And that is what's important in this episode and in full circle. It's almost like, again, when finding out the voodoo in Shenmue 2, it was very quick. It was kind of like one short story pace. But in this anime, they really draw out these stories, which is good because we're seeing a lot more light come into these episodes. And with Gui Shangli in particular, she's just trying to show Rio that, hey, you never know what you hold or what value is in front of you until you really take a deeper look. Next up, we have, of course, more scenes that weren't in the game. Joy runs into Wang and basically wants to find out where Rio is. And Wang's like, well, I'll help you if you pay me a little bit. And it's funny because it's really showing you how Joy was able to find Rio so often, and the fact that he really was interested in Rio and looking for him all the time. Where in the games, you would just kind of run into her, or she'd just ride by in her motorcycle and pop out of nowhere. This series is showing you that she was really trying to find out where he was all the time. In this next scene, we see a quick conversation between Fang Mei and Shu Ying. And Fang Mei basically told Shu Ying that Rio's a scatterbrain. And she's like, you know what? You should help Rio. And then from there, Shu Ying was just like, follow me. None of this happened in the games because, of course, Rio's not here. So if Rio's not there, it didn't really happen in the games. So in this next scene, Wang finds Rio, and then you can honestly see like a little bit of camaraderie and kind of a little bit of a friendship developing between Rio and Wang. And then, of course, there was Joy standing right behind Wang. She is kind of wondering, what happened to you? Where did you go? Like, you weren't at the hotel anymore. And he's like, well, I found another place to stay. And there's where you see kind of a hint of jealousy in Joy's eyes. But then Rio, of course, oblivious to everything. It's like, I'm looking for a martial artist. I need a martial artist to know about voodoo. That's where Wang comes up with, there's a lady in Pigeon Park. More on her later. Now here, he goes to Pigeon Park and he actually meets a woman from the games known as Eileen. Now Eileen is basically a martial artist who pretty much trains right there in the park. And when she sees Rio, she's like, I can tell you're a martial artist. Would you like to spar? And he's like, well, I don't have time right now. And she's like, what, because I'm a woman? Both that happens in the game and in the anime. The difference is in the anime, she actually tries to strike Rio, and Rio is able to counter quickly. So she's like, whoa, impressed. And then Rio, of course, asks her, do you know about the voodoo? Because I need to know. And she's like, not really. But then she's like, I know another martial artist. We can go talk to her. And they go to a convenience store where they talk to Izumi. Now, Izumi is also in the games, and she's kind of like a side quest storyline that actually has you fight this martial arts tournament, and she can actually take you there. So the background to Izumi is that she's just a Japanese exchange student, and she's in Hong Kong for that program, of course. She's really good at martial arts because you actually do get to fight her in the games. So Izumi tries to strike Rio, and Rio kind of counters it, and she's like, whoa. But then he's like, do you know the voodoo? And she's like, voodoo? So basically, Rio's out of luck. So now in this scene, which of course, again, is not in the games, Shu Ying and Fang Mei are walking, and they see two kids getting picked on. Looks like a brother and sister. And of course, Shu Ying saves them. She intimidates the thugs so harshly that all she had to do was move her foot slightly and give them a really strong look, and they just hightailed it out of there. But then the little boy, the older brother to the sister, was like, they're just gonna come back and I gotta learn how to fight harder. And Shu Ying was basically reminded of her older brother in the past and pretty much said, look, you gotta find a better path. Don't do this. And I think that helps once again establish Shu Ying's reasons for doing what she's doing with Rio and of course with everyone she meets. Rio then finds himself getting tea with Joy and Wang, of course thinking about more martial artists. But then Rio sees that someone's getting picked on outside regarding property. Then Joy kind of fills him in saying, look, this happens all the time, unfortunately, in Hong Kong because the United Kingdom is pretty much going to let go of Hong Kong and Hong Kong's going to be on its own. And then land sharks want to take over those properties and knock down those buildings to build new ones, which could be good, but you have old tenants that live there that do not want to move out. And it's happening all the time in Hong Kong, but nobody really pays attention. which is sad. So as he's going through all of this and seeing what's going on, they talk about it's like 4 o'clock, and he's like, 4 o'clock? Oh no, I was supposed to help out with the books at 4 o'clock. And he's out of there. Moving on, Fang Mei is upset because Rio showed up late and she had to do all the work herself. And then she was like, what were you doing? And he's like, well, I had to educate myself on the voodoo. And she's like, you only think about yourself. And he's like, but my ultimate goal and the reason I'm here is to find Yanduzu. And she's like, just upset. And at that point, she's out of there. And then Shu Ying asks Fang Mei, what's wrong? She's like, nothing. Then Rio tells Shu Ying, look, I showed up late and she's upset. And Shu Ying was like, listen, don't think badly of her. She's just reminding me of someone I know. And in this scene, Joy and Wong are sitting in the shop. But I wanted to point this particular scene out. You see the same guy who was dealing with the land sharks, and you see a little girl run up to him with a balloon, and then they walk away together. Now this visual right here that I'm showing you, it kind of reminded me of a very famous artist and his art. It's called Girl with Balloon, and it's from Banksy. Banksy's from London. No one knows who Banksy is, but he does incredible artwork that's random. You never know when it's going to show up, but it's always meant to send a message. Girl with Balloon in particular is one of his most famous murals, and I'm sure you've seen it before. And this mural in itself is supposed to represent basically just kind of like, people sometimes say, you know, it's a formula of like, let it go, let the stress go, but it also has to do with all the things that we deal with in society. And this is kind of what it means to me. And it's just like, let all that stress go and just kind of have the innocence of a child. Now, but it can have many meanings. Banksy's art and Banksy's kind of message also deals with societal big things. Like it's anti-war, it's pretty much anti-corruption, it's all of these messages in one. And it's kind of what's happening in this episode, in this neighborhood. So the fact that the animators and the storytellers were able to kind of put that whole message or subliminal message of Banksy in this episode, and it's really not part of the games, but they did it here, I thought was really creative. And it kind of showed that they'll not only take items from the Shenmue games, but different references that other people might recognize. So good on the animators. But anyway, while they're there, they overhear a conversation about a martial artist fighting against these land sharks in Carmine Quarter, in the Yantin apartments. And they're like, whoa, we gotta go there. Now moving on to this next scene, we see that Fang Mei is just had it up to here with Rio. And she's complaining about Rio to Shu Ying. But Shu Ying's like, you know, his style, since he's such a straight shooter, kind of reminds me of you. And this basically gets Fang Mei to start thinking about it, like, wait a second. So in this next scene, Rio is getting scolded by Han Hui Lu about not understanding Kung Fu enough, and that he really is lacking. This reminded Rio of when his father used to tell him that his martial arts is lacking, or that he's lacking. And at that point, you see Joy and Wong show up and be like, we found another martial artist, Gui Song Lee, in the Yantin apartments in South Carmine Quarter. We gotta go there. It's like, okay. Because he's so focused on his mission. And that whole time while this is going on, Fang Mei was listening and wondering what's happening. So Rio rushes to help Gui Shang with these land sharks, and he basically doesn't hesitate and beats them all up. And then she was like, what made you do that for me? And he's like, well, it's kind of like you said before, you just gotta be aware of your surroundings and know what's going on around you, and then do what's right. And throughout all of this, Fang Mei was actually watching. And then that's when Gui Shang reveals that, yes, I'm old, but I'm Gui Shang, and you just proved that you can follow this voodoo known as Yi, which is basically to act without hesitation to do what is right. Yi. So there we go. The third voodoo. Moving on. So Rio rushes back to the Manmo temple at night, and he finds Shu Ying, and he's like, is that what you thought I was lacking? Basically, you thought I was lacking Yi, which is to do what is right without hesitation. And she basically expressed herself saying, you know, you just are after revenge. And really, I want no part in that. Because the events of the day in Shu Ying really affect her. She wants no part of Rio's revenge. And that's why she's so hesitant to help him. Again, this scene is not in the game. So a lot of these are not in the game. And it really kind of emphasizes that. So here, now we have a big difference between the games and this animation. After Rio was done talking to Xu Ying, he finds Fang Mei, and Fang Mei apologizes for being so harsh to Rio. And then she's like, look, I want to share some information with you. And then she tells Rio that, look, there's this book written by Yan Duzu that's in the library. You should go find it. And then he just runs straight to the library, and then looking around, he actually finds the book, and that's really where the episode ends. This is quite different from the games, because in the games, Fang Mei does not tell you where the Wulin Shu is at all. In fact, you find out about the Wulin Shu in Wise Men's Kung Fu, where they tell you that there's this book called the Wulin Shu in Manmo Temple, and that's the book that's written by Yan Duzu. And then when you go to Manmo Temple, you can't go at night because it's locked. So it's only accessible when you are doing those chores of taking out the books that you do every day. And then when looking for that book in that room, you find that it's locked. The Wulin Shu is actually locked, and you can't get to it without the key. Xu Ying has the key, and she will not give you that key unless you do this other leaf catching exercise. You have to catch 3 leaves in a row, or else she won't give you the key to teach you another lesson. All of this is not in this series, unfortunately, and I think that's a really good lesson. They might have it later, I'm not sure, but it was really cool to do that, to earn the key to get the Wulin Shu, and it made you try a little bit harder. In that book, if you know anything, a little bit spoiler that might happen in later episodes, it deals with the Chawan sign, and doing the Chawan sign, it shows you that. And you find out more information about the Chawan sign from Guishang. But who knows how they're going to deal with that stuff, or if they'll have the leaf catching exercise at all, which I think is a shame if they don't have it, but it's totally okay because this story has enough packed into it. And that's it for this week's episode of Shenmue The Animation, Episode 8, review, changes, and all of that stuff. I thought it was a pretty good episode, and it had a lot of filler that we actually didn't get to see in the actual video game. So it's almost like adding more to the lore, which I totally enjoy. Episode 9 premieres tonight. I'm excited. Hope you guys are. Definitely check it out tonight. And thank you. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed these type of videos. And as always, you can make my day when you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. Hit that like button too so that more people can see this. We want Shenmue 4. See ya.